Good morning and welcome. We're giving additional minute or so to enable the participants to connect and join us. So bear with us. We're gonna start around 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, I think we can get started since as the participants are joining, but we have already quite a few online. So I would like to really start by thanking, first of all, good morning and good afternoon from wherever in the world you are joining us. And thank you for all the participants for joining us today. As you know, we are pleased, CERFAM and all the organization, to see so many of you. We had around 266 participants that have registered. We hope to have a critical mass of participants today and throughout. For 1 hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours maximum, we'll be together. And we are so happy to have those participants from more than 50 countries that will be hearing about an important issue. So thanks again for this great turnout. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Teixeira. I'm the director ad interim of the Regional Center of Excellence Against Hunger and Malnutrition, CERFAM, based in Abidjan. And I will be serving as your moderator for today's webinar. So today's webinar is about assessing school meals. What is the power of data? What is the power of evidence generation and the power of knowledge management for optimal programming? This is a third webinar of a series called The Power of School Meals. How do we carry forward the momentum amidst the global crisis? This series was created to put the spotlight on school feeding, to highlight the journey of school meals, especially over the last few years, which has posed, as you know, numerous challenges, polycrisis, which have had devastating effects on the world, particularly on education, on health, on nutrition, on local economies. So it started, as you know, with the COVID-19 pandemics that really had setbacks on education, the impacts of the Russia-Ukraine war, and not to mention, of course, climatic hazard, migration, conflicts, which continue to exacerbate the hunger and malnutrition situation around the world. So, as you know, the situation is not getting better. We're getting off the tracks of attaining the sustainable development goals, particularly SDG2 on zero hunger. And the last report, the SOFI report that was released just a few days ago, is showing that the number of malnourished people in the world is increasing. So how can school feeding, what is the role of school feeding? What will be the role of the data knowledge management in navigating this difficult situation? Just as a reminder, the first two webinars, which review the data, the state of school feeding amidst the various crises, shed light also on innovative financing mechanisms, those perspectives that will put forth durable solutions on how to make school meals program more resilient and more sustainable. This third webinar aims to highlight the important role of research and evidence generation and how data-driven analytics can create effective school meals programs and policies. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, before going forward, let us understand why it is important to invest in research and evidence generation. And why do we need data? And how can it improve school meals programs? First of all, as you know, data allows us to measure the impact of a given matter. Whether it's a strategy, a project, data and evidence are able to conduct comprehensive review of all the information and evidence which exists, allowing us to identify effectiveness, efficiencies, but also the challenges, the gaps in knowledge. Without reliable data, it is difficult to understand the true nature of malnutrition, of hunger, and the impact on our diets, the role of climate change, and many other issues. With quality data, we are able to make evidence-based decisions. Data and evidence generation give us an indication of what is going right, where we need to focus more attention, how we can fill the gap, and so on. To the contrary, a lack of data hampers the creation of adequate strategies, programs, and initiatives that governments, development partners, and other stakeholders need to be able to deliver at scale in an effective and efficient manner. So we all know that school meals is a game changer for children, communities, and local economies. It's a key multi-dimensional pathway to human capital development and sustainable development. The last year has been a turning moment for school meals. Not only have we seen a resurgence of interest, but also global attention to school meals program. And we're gonna hear today that there is an incredible amount of data out there that just need to be disseminated, understood, and really used to make decisions that will leverage the human capital, development, education, health, and nutrition for all. So you may well be asking or wondering why it's so important for SERFAM to be in this playing field. As a leading center specializing in knowledge management, technical assistance, and South-South cooperation, we strive to change lives by creating win-win partnership between governments, policymakers, technical experts, and other stakeholders, while providing also the needed expertise as well as tools to transfer and share knowledge. However, we cannot do that without sound data, without research, without evidence. So today, we have the pleasure of hearing from and learning from various speakers who will share their perspective, and we will have the Professor Donald Bundy. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Donald Bundy from the Global Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition, Dr. Ayala Winman from the Global Child Nutrition Foundation, GCNF, and also research associate at Michigan State University, Ms. Melissa Vargas from the FAO WFP School Food Global Hub, and also Ms. Fofana from the University of Nangui Agrogua in Côte d'Ivoire. And before we start with the juicy part of the webinar, let me just inform you or share a few housekeeping rules before we start. Please, for those Francophone colleagues and others, know that there's interpretation services that are offered in French and English. So just press the right button that you feel on Zoom, on that interface. And I hope that interpretation is going fine. Otherwise, just let us know. And also throughout the session, please send us any question you may have via the chat box or the Q&A function that is also on the Zoom menu bar. This will help us during the webinar to answer to the questions you may have. And just in case, if we don't, we will make sure that at a later stage, the panelists are able to provide us with answers so we can share with you. Rest assured also that all the presentations will be shared with the participant, and the report will also include the recording of this webinar. So let's move now to our panelists. Let me start with Professor Donald Bundy. So Donald Bundy is a professor of epidemiology and development at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He is a director, also I said it, of the Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition, and senior advisor to the UN World Food Programme, leading a global research effort to provide evidence-based guidance to the more than 80 member states that have joined the School Meal Coalition. This with a view to strengthening national school meals and complementary health programs. So Donald Bundy is a fellow of the Center for Global Development and an adjunct at Linacre College, University of Oxford, and a founding member of the Partnership for Child Development, co-creating the FRESH framework at the World Education Forum in Dakar, Senegal in 2000. Previously, Professor Bundy served also as a senior advisor to the global health team of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, leading education and health specialists to the World Bank Group for the African region and Human Development Policy Unit, and also professor and deputy director, Epidemiology Center, University of Oxford in UK. You may want to know that Professor Bundy has authored more than 400 books and scientific publications, including Rethinking School Feeding in 2009. I remember that very, very good publication that was made that was just groundbreaking at that time. And he has also produced award-winning documentary film on public health in development, including a series for the American Public Broadcasting Service. He has contributed also to all 4 editions of the World Bank Group's disease control priorities since 1993, and was senior advisor to the UN World Food Programme State of School Feeding Worldwide reports in 2020 and 2022. Thank you very much, Professor Bundy, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for that very, very kind introduction, which I very much appreciate. It's great to have this opportunity to join you all on this day, and I want to say how we all respect CERFAM for their work, and we look forward to a much closer relationship between CERFAM and the Research Consortium as we begin to move forward. I was asked by Patrick to talk today about the Research Consortium in the context of providing information and providing indicators. So let's see if I can move forward on that. So let's start with the first slide, please. So this is a slide that's probably the format of which is probably familiar to all of you. This is a population pyramid, and we're looking at population pyramids for sub-Saharan Africa and also for a bunch of OECD countries, and middle and high income countries. And you can see the shape of the pyramid is very different in both places. But what I wanted to emphasize here is that our task as people that work on the school meals issue and the school health issue is we're addressing the needs of the 5 to 20-year-olds broadly. And as you can see that the figure for sub-Saharan Africa is that about 38% of the population are in that category, whereas in the OECD countries, it's somewhere around 18%. Now, I'll make 2 points about this. One is those are big numbers, both of them. 18% is still a very substantial part of the population. Clearly 38% is much even greater. But both of those groups are vitally important for those populations, because those are the groups, those are the ages at which we educate young people. This is the period of time between the first 1,000 days of development, when we invest very heavily, of course, in young people, when we invest again now in their education and their development, because they will end up as adults, they will end up as the human capital for all these nations. So I think that's a very important point for us to keep in mind, that when we talk about school meals, we are talking about targeting a very important part of the global population. Can I have the next slide, please? And most countries have begun to realize that by January 2020. So on the left here, we have a map of the world showing the really remarkable coverage of school meals and also school health programs. Most of these programs involved school health interventions like deworming or wash or menstrual hygiene. So the realization of the importance of these is pretty well worldwide. 388 million children being fed every day. So that's 70 billion meals a year. It's a huge amount of effort. And as the World Bank reports, this is the most extensive safety net in the world. So an extraordinary global reach for these programs in January 2020. But as we all know, by April 2020, COVID had arrived. The pandemic, announced in March, resulted in countries closing their schools. And this was a worldwide school closure, the first that's ever happened, resulting in 1.5 billion children suddenly finding themselves out of school. Children now finding themselves no longer having access to that school meal. Many children, that was the big meal of the day. For many children, that was the most nutritious meal of their day. It also meant, of course, that life changed in all sorts of other ways. And for the social consequences were very serious. So schoolgirls often became wives, often became mothers, and dropped out altogether of the school system and have never come back. Boys too became laborers and left and moved on. There was very significant consequences, and we see those consequences for low-income countries, but also for high-income countries. And the debate about that continues to this day in rich countries about the loss of educational opportunity for those generations of children. So I mentioned that to say that caused a sudden realization worldwide of the need to do something about it. And if I have the next slide, please, it resulted in a reaction from heads of state, senior government officials across the globe. And I just want to emphasize something here. So here we've got the minister from Finland. Finland, a country which has had school meals for the last 75 years, universal school meals, and sees them as crucial to the development of the country. But I wanted to just emphasize here President Kagame and President Macron, both sending out tweets that are essentially the same message, that this has been a terrible thing. We need to rebuild, and we need to pay attention to our children more as we go forward. It was the first time the world understood the counterfactual of what happens when you have no schools. That had never happened before. But we suddenly discovered if you don't have schools, it's very hard to look after the well-being of school-aged children. Of course, having no schools also meant they had no education. But those two things together were the problem. And looking forward, people are saying, heads of state are saying, we need to now make sure that children continue to be looked after. We need to care about their well-being and their education if we are to create populations which will be productive, healthy, and have long and successful lives. So, next slide, please. The reaction to this was the creation of the School Meals Coalition. This was done in October 2021 at the Food Systems Summit. The creation of a group led by government. This is a country-led program, led now by 85 countries. Every week we get new countries joining, and you can see it's across the globe: the US, China, Cuba. I think it's 36 countries now in Africa, the African Union, much of Europe, the European Union, a major global new effort to promote school meals. And in doing this, the next slide, please, the governments have come together and agreed to 3 major goals. One goal is to restore national school meal programs to what they were in 2020 by 2023. And I'm just going to pause for a moment and say, amazingly, the surveys that have been completed by the World Food Programme, by GCNF, we're going to hear from Dr. Weinman next, talking about GCNF's work here, USDA, the surveys that reporting on school meals. Remember, I told you 388 million children were fed in 2020, then effectively 0. Now it's come back to 420 million. So actually the number of children covered now is more than prior to COVID. Of course, I'm not going to mislead you. Of course, the countries that most need that improvement are the ones that have changed least. So we still have work to do there. But it is amazing that countries have really turned around and made this happen. The second goal in progress, set to reach the 73 million children who were not reached by 2030. And the third goal, to raise the standards, raise the quality of school meals programs and school health programs worldwide. And that's exactly what SURFAM and the Research Consortium are particularly concerned with. Have the next slide, please. And so one of the big moves by all these countries was to say, what we need is good evidence and we need good guidance for our parliamentarians and our policymakers. So we need to have a research base, and we want an independent research base, one coming out of the academic world. And this is the Research Consortium. And I want to just give you an idea of the structure of the Research Consortium, because that's what I'm going to now really focus on. So the Research Consortium is led by the member states. Now, as I said, 85, the numbers just keep changing. The bosses of the Research Consortium are the member states, your countries. There's a small secretariat at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine where I'm based, which has a coordinating role. And the real work of this consortium is done by these 6 communities of practice. Communities of practice meaning existing networks across the world to make these things happen. I'm going to talk about the 5 of these programs, but let me just talk about the one at the end, the most recent one, which is the program for early career researchers and for young people. And just to say that there our focus is to try and encourage young people to come into the business of school meals, of school health, of promoting the well-being of school children, to see that as a career opportunity. And if any of you are interested in that area, do please get in touch with us and be part of that community of practice. But let's move on to each of the communities of practice in turn. So next slide, please. I'm going to start with the Impact and Evidence group, which is doing standardized systematic reviews. This is the first systematic review of school meals and school health since 2007, a very famous review published then, based on 18 trials, while the current effort, we hope, will include approximately 80 trials. So we're expecting a very significant area of improvement there. Any of you are interested in this? Let's sign up, join this community of practice. If I can have the next slide, please. This is about the community of practice known as Analytics and Metrics. And here we have a group that's focusing on a number of issues around the particularly around the financing and productivity of programs. They're particularly working here on the value for money aspects of these programs. And I want to just emphasize here that we have ongoing in 4 countries, including Cote d'Ivoire. There's ongoing programs run by the countries themselves. These are programs which are led by the governments, usually multi-sectoral teams with local researchers and local thought leaders. And the question they're asking is, if you invest in school meals or school health, what are the returns? What are the benefits to that? And the important message here is that if you look at the different sectors, they each benefit. And so we've got 4 sectors: social protection, education, agriculture, health and nutrition. We look at those, each of those sectors is known to get significant returns from these programs. There's, of course, a lot of other sectors, and we're also looking at those. For example, gender. There's huge benefits for getting girls into schools through access to these programs. We are trying to cost those issues as well, because it's all of those issues together that make the school meals programs so attractive to governments. As I said, and in the yellow box here, largest safety net in the world. The returns are around $9 per dollar invested. Some are much higher, some are lower. And it's also a job creation exercise, because there are many workers required to deliver these programs. So that's one of the aspects of analytics and metrics. The second I want to just emphasize, the next slide, please, is on learning adjusted years of schooling. This comes back to Patrick's point about the importance of metrics. This is a new metric developed by the World Bank with others to look at how do we quantify the value of certain investments in education. And here we can see as on the slide, this slide on the y-axis, it's what's the return per $100 invested. And here we're looking at a range of different interventions. And the one in the red box is the health and development school-based interventions. And really the point I want to make is most of these interventions are education interventions, and we can see that health and well-being have the same sort of role, the same scale of effect as many of the education interventions. That's the important message that I do want you to take home. Well-being of children through the programs we're interested in is a very key part of the contribution to education. Go to the next slide, please. This is the good examples community of practice. And this is the plan here is that every country, all 85 countries in the consortium will develop programs, develop case studies describing what's going on in their countries. We've got 24 programs case studies either done or in progress, with them listed here. It's a very important part of our work. Next example. I'm just going to quickly go through some of these. This is the community of practice called nutrition measurement. Last year, we focused on phase 1, which was showing how important it was to intervene in school-age children in terms of nutrition and how poor our tracking is of those children. We really don't measure important nutritional measurements for school-age children or adolescents as a global thing. That's all in the process of changing. But as I say, last year, the focus was on showing it needed to be done. As we move forward, the focus is on Africa and on working with the existing networks of experts in Africa, particularly the African Nutrition Society. Okay, with the intention of I'm afraid I'm hearing the translator through my earphones at the moment. Okay, it's a bit distracting. Okay, so this second phase, which is where we're going this year, and I hope many of you will participate in this, is looking at indicators for school-aged children and adolescents. If I have the next slide, please. This food system, and the final one I'm going to talk about, sorry, this community of practice, the final final one I'm going to talk about is the diet and food systems, a new community of practice established in response to country demand. And this is a community that's about menu planning, about matching diet to nutritional needs, and matching the menu to what's available on the agricultural side. So this is about the power of procurement, if you like. This is now the schools being able to say, these are the kinds of foods we need. These are the kinds of foods we want. And that's a significant demand. It's something like 75 billion meals a year. It's a $48 billion industry. So there's a real role for school meals there in changing the way that food systems provide food for schools. But there's a second very important area that this community of practice is working on. If we have the next slide, please. And that area is on climate-friendly school meals, the issue of addressing the climate crisis, the environmental crisis through school meals programs. And this is a really important area. Food systems are responsible for a third of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. School meals programs are very politically influential, and they're also by far the majority of programs that can be actually influenced by governments directly. These are the biggest public school food systems. And so the policy levers on these systems are actually in the hands of governments. And what that means is that governments can change practices at will. And that's what we're trying to do here. In response to requests from the 85 governments that are part of the School Meals Coalition, we're trying to identify what are the things that they can usefully do, and what can they do that will have direct effects. And the three things we're focusing on in this area are first, energy, on the fact that governments can change from, for example, using open fires to using more efficient stoves, focusing on waste. And waste, by the way, is the third of the anthropogenic greenhouse gases from food. So it's a huge factor. That's something that a food system, a school system can really get a grip on and control. And then finally, diet itself. The diets and menus can select food items that, in the way they're produced agriculturally, have the least environmentally negative impacts and the least climate consequences. So these are things that governments can do at will, and that's what we're reporting on in this white paper. If I go to the next slide, please. And this is just to let you know that this is a process that's ongoing. We're very interested in people joining this process. We're developing the paper right now. We're actually going to announce the concept at the UN Food Systems Summit +2, which is going on next week in Rome, the stock-taking moment, as it's called. We'll be announcing the concept note, and then we'll be developing the paper. We'll be sharing it very widely during October, and then presenting it to the ministers of the 85 countries at a meeting chaired by President Macron in Paris in late October. And if those ministers agree to that, they will then take it forward to COP28 in Dubai during December. So that's the plan for this, for that sequence. And if I have the last slide, please. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to tell you about. We're always very keen to hear from you. This is the way to get in touch with us. We're very happy to add you to our mailing list so we can keep you up to date with what's going. But please, we want and need academics in all of these communities of practice. So if anything here is interesting you, please get in touch and join us. Thank you very much indeed. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Bundy. It was really, really very inspiring and rich of information, very fruitful to hear. First of all, for those who may not know it, all the background on the School Meal Coalition, really happy to see that now we have we have 85 countries that have joined and still counting. And I didn't know that it represented 55% of the global population, which is quite impressive, really. and particularly interested also to hear about this white paper of climate-friendly school meals, because this is a topic that comes regularly, and we know how sensitive this, how would I say, the utilization in a responsible manner of the natural resources, preserving the environment, making sure that we are also shaping from a very early age the good behaviors and attitudes, and school meals can play really a very important role in doing that. And I know that a few organizations, including WFP, have been making progress in that field, really making sure that school meals contribute actually to the sustainable utilization of natural resources, and these homegrown regenerative agriculture systems provide promoting biodiversity, resilience, and of course, food sovereignty, which is really, really key. Thank you very much. I know that there is a question already there, a very precise question. You may want to see, I think partially was responded during your presentation, but Touré Youssouf from Côte d'Ivoire is asking, what is the level of job creation in school meals? And what is the impact on local producers' income? Of course, he wants specific data on Côte d'Ivoire you may not have at hand, but he said, well, in Côte d'Ivoire, they're importing rice, but he wants to know what's the impact of the school meals on both the job creation side and also on the local producer income.
Patrick, do you want me to address that now, or would you like me to respond?
Yes.
Yep.
Just in a minute or so, because I know also that your time is limited with us in case we go further.
No, I'm good. I'm going to stay with you, but I'm going to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, excellent. But I think that will also foster more comments to come on but I think it was linked to the presentation because we especially in Africa, there's a lot of debate right now on job creation, youth employment, and looking at how this program that contributes to I say global public goods can also contribute, including school meals, to this aspect. Yeah. So just a few lines.
Sure. It's a great question, but just to be clear, I am planning to stay throughout the session, so I want to be part of this.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. So it's a very good question. The figures we use now at the moment are based on from the report of the World Food Programme, the state of school feeding worldwide. So they have estimates, I think, for 2013, 2020, and 2022, which suggests somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 jobs are created per 100,000 children fed. We're using a measure like that because we want to gear it to the size of the country and the size of the program. So this is quite substantive, and these are, and I want to emphasize that these are jobs. These aren't volunteer roles, because that's a big issue that people sometimes talk about this, particularly in terms of it being exploitative of women in particular. So this is about jobs, and so it does look like there's a significant factor there. But this is precisely why we're doing the value for money studies, and Côte d'Ivoire is one of the countries doing that, is to find out what are the specific details for specific country contexts. And so I'm afraid we haven't got there yet. Actually, some of your colleagues, Patrick, may know much more about this than I do in Côte d'Ivoire on the.
Yes.
But we don't have numbers yet, as far as I know, on the specifics for different countries. But it's the right question, because those are exactly the important questions that will matter to the Minister of Finance in deciding how and what to invest in. So this is very good.
No, thank you very much, Professor Bundy, and stay with us as we move to the next speaker. This was really inspiring, very, very rich, and I really encourage also the participants who are following us to really write their questions on the chat box. As I said, we'll try to answer to them during the webinar, but in the worst case, we'll have written answers provided afterwards. I would like really to thank the more than 90 participants that have been with us since we started. We have more joining, and I do want to remind them that they have access to the interpretation, French, English, so they should feel free to switch to any of those languages. So merci beaucoup à tous les participants qui nous rejoignent de toutes les parties du monde et beaucoup en Afrique. J'ai pu voir le Niger, la Tanzanie, le Mali, le Cameroun, la Côte d'Ivoire et bien d'autres pays que nous allons bien sûr remercier plus tard. Now I'm switching to the next panelist, Dr. Ayala Weinman, who is a research coordinator at the Global Child Nutrition Foundation, known as GCNF. So in addition to being a research coordinator at GCNF, Dr. Ayala Weinman serves as research associate at Michigan State University in the Department of Agriculture, Food, and Resource Economics, as well as being a senior research fellow at the Mwapata Institute in Lilongwe, Malawi. So Dr. Weinman research relates broadly to rural development and food security. She focuses on food systems transformation, nutrition, and agriculture land markets. Her work is primarily in sub-Saharan Africa. Welcome, Dr. Weinman. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much for that introduction. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see the screen. Proceed.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll be speaking for just a few minutes to provide a brief overview of the Global Survey of School Meal Programs, which is implemented by the Global Child Nutrition Foundation. And by way of providing a bit of background, the Global Child Nutrition Foundation, or GCNF, is an organization that works to ensure that governments and their partners have the resources, tools, and connections they need to introduce and scale up high-quality school meal programs throughout the world. We have two flagship programs. These include the Global Survey of School Meal Programs, which I'll be talking about in some detail, as well as the Global Child Nutrition Forum, which I'll mention just briefly. The Global Child Nutrition Forum is an annual or semi-annual convening of global school meal leaders from throughout the world. It takes place in a different location each time, and it is a site of peer learning exchange and also the site of the provision of technical assistance. In 2018, GCNF took stock of the existing landscape of data on school feeding programs. We conducted an exercise where we systematically looked for the information that was available on school feeding in every country in the world. This was an extensive exercise, and it was a bit disheartening. What we found was a data landscape that was rather fragmented. Some countries had no data at all. We found that the quality of information on school feeding was very inconsistent, both across countries and also both across different programs that were operating within countries. We found that we were more likely to find good, detailed information for programs that were implemented by the World Food Programme or a similar agency compared to programs that are implemented wholly by national governments. We found that that information was not collected and published regularly over the years, and this made it difficult to make a point-in-time comparison and also difficult to identify trends over time. And we found that in many countries, there was data, pieces of information were missing. So we found a data landscape that was highly fragmented, and this is what inspired GCNF to begin or to launch the Global Survey of School Meal Programs in 2019. This survey is funded partly by the US Department of Agriculture. And the survey gathers information on the scope of school feeding in each country in a recently completed school year. So this captures the number of children and also the targeting criteria, who are the beneficiaries. It captures information on government financing of and engagement with school feeding, aspects of school feeding related to nutrition, education, and gender. It captures information on agricultural and private sector engagement with school meal programs, health and sanitation topics. We also ask in the survey about employment, which relates to the good question that was asked a few moments ago in the chat. And we capture information on the impact of emergencies. The Global Survey of School Meal Programs, as I noted, it began in 2019. We had a second round of the survey in 2021, and we'll have a third round that will begin towards the very end of 2023. The survey gathers information at the country level, as well as the level of each large-scale school feeding program that's operating within a country. The survey is designed to be answered by a government representative, or what we call a survey focal point. This is somebody who is appointed by the government and empowered by the government to, first of all, to gather the information necessary to fill out the survey, capturing information on all school meal activities happening in the country, and synthesize that information and submit it on behalf of the country government. We have a global survey team that is found throughout the world, and each member has a portfolio of country governments that they work with. As part of the survey, we've also put together a glossary with definitions of key terms in order to make sure that we are all speaking the same language around school feeding. The survey is translated into 7 languages. And in the end, the Global Survey of School Meal Programs has established a unique global database of standardized information on school feeding programs, covering all related sectors and activities. In 2021, the global survey drew responses from 139 countries. Among these, 125 countries responded to the survey by saying, yes, we do have some large-scale school meal programs operating in the country, and altogether they provided very detailed information on 183 school meal programs, again, located throughout the world. And when we look at both years of the survey that have been conducted so far, 2019 and 2021, 155 countries have participated in the survey, shared their data, and are found with their information is found in the GCNF database. And these 155 countries hold about 87% of the world's population. As I noted that, I'm not sure if I noted this yet. The next round of the survey will take place, it will begin towards the end of 2023, but mostly it will take place in 2024. We're just now in the process of refining the survey in order to make sure that it meets the needs of our various data users. By November 2024, we expect to have 3 rounds of survey data to explore and to share. In terms of resources that are derived from this survey and available on the GCNF website, there are country reports, which are colorful fact sheets that summarize what is happening with school feeding in each country of the world, presented in a very standardized way. So that makes it very easy to compare across countries and also to compare over time within a country. And these fact sheets are translated into various languages as appropriate as possible, I should say. On the GCNF website, we also have very detailed survey reports that summarizing the data collected in the survey. We have infographics focusing on specific topics or specific regions of the world, again, drawing from the survey data to understand what is happening with school meal programs. The website is listed there, and you can also find it just by typing in gcnf.org, and the data set is available to the public upon request, as well as various survey-related materials are available on the website. Okay, I'm getting to the concluding section. The role of the global survey of school meal programs for better programming and policy making. There's a lot I could say about this, but I'll be very brief. First, some of the more straightforward roles that the survey plays. GCNF makes the data that we have collected available for school meal partners, donors, and researchers. The data from the global survey feeds into the World Food Programme's State of School Feeding Worldwide, as well as it is used by other researchers and other partners. The survey allows for progress related to school meal programs to be tracked over time. As Professor Donald Bundy noted, this is quite an exciting time for school meal programs around the world. Not always, it hasn't, in recent years, it hasn't always been for good reasons. There's been turbulence, but then also a lot of growth. And so with the global survey, we're able to track those changes over time. The survey also enables stakeholders to better advocate for resources. And now I'm going to highlight 3 points that I think are a little bit less obvious, but we think are quite important of how the global survey adds to better programming and policy making. First, the survey brings together all aspects of school meal programs under one umbrella. And this is especially important when you have different government agencies that are engaged in school meal programs and prior to the survey didn't necessarily speak to one another fluidly. It's also important when there are multiple programs operating in a country, sometimes with different implementing partners. Again, without having a smooth flow of information prior to the survey. We find that the survey empowers governments to better understand what's happening with programs that are being implemented by partner organizations. And in fact, when the focal point gathers information from various programs and synthesizes it, they also end up with ownership over the data, a sense of ownership and a better understanding. And finally, we have found that asking questions for which countries don't currently have data or answers can actually catalyze attention to those matters. And we have an expectation that it will inspire data gathering and more complete reporting in the future as the global survey is repeated every few years again and again. Relatedly, asking questions about activities that are not being implemented can help a survey respondent to think about the activities and their values within their own contexts. I didn't share any results from the survey. I just wanted to briefly provide an overview of what the survey as a data resource is. We welcome any questions and also ideas for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weinman. And it was really rich in terms of findings, as you said. But what I was particularly struck on the process that's quite demanding, being able to reach out to all those countries. And we're talking about 89% of the world population. This shows the importance of school meal programs and how important it is really to bridge this gap in terms of data, in terms of evidence generation. And I wish you the best of luck in your next endeavor. to get to 2024, this next global survey you will be doing. So for you, I have a question, which is how you see this global survey also complementing the state of the school feeding in the world. That would be just a question. And how do you think this survey also has been able to be embedded kind of in the national school meal program? So it's not always a heavy lifting. But that question also goes to the other panelists. We can also answer to that at the end of the day. But we see there's a lot of demand for the sustainability issue. We want to make sure that also embedded in the national systems, so they don't always be seen as ad hoc survey, but they become more part of the normal things, because it's important to showcase. It's important. Donald was saying studies suggest that for every dollar invested, you have $9 in return. That's a kind of data that speaks to the Minister of Finance and to other ministers. So it's really important to fill that gap. So not sure whether I was clear enough, but just to see, I'm very happy to see all the survey here, the state of it. But for the participants that are listening to us, just to briefly say how they complement each other. Over to you.
Sure. I'll do my best to respond.
Donald will also from his side, I guess.
So in my perspective, the global survey and the state of school feeding worldwide report are extremely complementary. In the past two versions, the report actually, the report is based even largely on data coming out of the global survey of school meal programs. So we are very happy to share the data with the World Food Program. And when you line up the data, not all of it, but maybe about 70% of the data that have been feeding into the report in recent years come from the global survey. So these are very complementary. They fit together, I think, like a puzzle. And I think that we do need to continue to have good conversations about how to best be complementary. So to me, the question that you asked is really the start of a conversation, not something I have a definitive answer for. You mentioned about how governments themselves can collect data rather than sort of responding to ad hoc surveys from an external actor. And I can just very briefly comment that, I mean, that is the motivation for the global survey, being so focused on having a government representative be the one to answer the survey and to do so repeatedly over years, such that they develop the habit of gathering this data together themselves. And at the same time, I also want to say that I think that not just collecting data in response to an external survey, but really using data that's a capacity that it needs to be built. You know, in some settings, it needs to be built, and we can indeed focus more on that. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think those are all challenges that we should also turn into opportunities, really, to build a strong evidence base. The governments should understand as well the benefit they have. What are the advantages in really building a core body of evidence that will really show Donald mentioned the value for money of their investment, and school meals is a good one. Thank you for this excellent presentation. And I want just to remind also the participants that GCNF has been instrumental in organizing conferences that really gather stakeholders on school meals and school health, nutrition, on a lot of those issues. The last one being in Cotonou last year. We had the opportunity to participate in that one. and we wish you the best of luck, not only on the global survey, but also on the next conference you will be organizing. And just stay with us, Dr. Weinman, and I encourage the participant to ask their questions on the chat box. It is still there. We'll have a question-answer sessions right after. And I want to also thank the additional participants that have been joining us. We are now close to 100 participants online, and I've seen there even from other countries. We have Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Senegal is there. So this is really refreshing to see the interest that this topic has across the continent, but also beyond Africa. So we're going to move to the next panelist. And it's important to mention this endeavor, and you did insist on that, has to be complementary. We have to build on each other strengths, competitive edge, experience, and field presence, policy added value. And in that vein, I think it's important to also mention the great work that FAO has been doing, particularly on the School Food Global Hub that they have. It's with a pleasure that I'm welcoming Ms. Melissa Vargas Araya, which serves as a technical advisor for nutrition guidelines and standards at the FAO School Food Global Hub. So Ms. Vargas Araya is a nutritionist and graduate from the University of Costa Rica and holds a master's degree in nutrition, food science, and technology. So she's currently pursuing a PhD program for Wageningen University. And Melissa has been working in the nutrition division at FAO headquarters for more than 10 years. Currently, Ms. Vargas Araya serves as technical coordinator of a global project to support countries in developing nutrition guidelines and standards for school meals. Moreover, she serves as a focal point for FAO School Food and Nutrition Task Force, providing technical assistance to member countries on the integration of nutrition education and nutrition standards into regional school policy frameworks, global guidelines, and program proposals. Welcome, Ms. Melissa Vargas. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. And thank you, Serfan, for inviting us to be part of this important event. I will share my screen now. I hope everybody can see it. So today I wanted to present the School Food Global Hub that we have recently launched just last year in partnership with the World Food Programme. But I just wanted to give a brief context of the hub. It is immersed in a project that has been supported by the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And the main aim of this project is to fulfill a gap that we have seen in mainly school meal programs, having strong nutrition standards that are developed in a robust and data-driven way. We have seen, and the evidence is telling us, that the nutrition outcomes of school meal programs are heavily dependent, of course, on what the meal actually consists of. So the impact on diet and nutrition outcomes is linked and it's enhanced when the program has robust nutrition standards. And the process of developing these standards is not very clear yet. We know we have done global assessments to understand which countries have nutrition standards, how do they develop them, but there is a big methodological black box on how the decisions are made to understand what the meal, when the meal should be provided, what the meal should be comprised of, what targets are being used, and how the target groups are being defined. So this project aims to fulfill that gap into providing step-by-step guidance that can be globally adapted on how to design robust and holistic nutrition standards that are according to the context, to the nutrition needs of the children and the adolescents that are targeted from that school meal program in the country, and also that are holistic and that determine and integrate aspects of sustainability, of environmental sustainability, also aspects of social sustainability, as well as the programmatic challenges that many countries have. We are developing this project together with the World Food Programme, and the School Food Global Hub has been a very integral part of it. The objectives of this hub are basically to enhance the global dialogue and the technical exchanges on school meals, but also on how these school meals are, they do not exist in a vacuum in children's diets or in a school. They interact with different types of school food. They interact with what vendors sell inside and outside the schools. They interact with children's diets outside the school. So we are very interested in having the dialogue on specifically on nutrition, but on how school meals are interacting with these other parts of the school and other parts of the diet, as well as the role that food education plays in enhancing the impacts of school meal programs and other policies and interventions in the school. We also aim to have a one-stop shop where stakeholders can reference global and regional guidance resources from different UN agencies that have a focus on nutrition, on enhancing the nutrition impact of school meal programs and other parts of the school, like school food environment interventions, like policies to regulate the sale and marketing of certain types of foods, and as well as the education component of school food and school meals. And of course, where we can really clearly link to the latest evidence, systematic reviews, mainly that we are collecting now, and meta-analysis on school meal programs, on different types of nutrition and diet impacts and outcomes, but also on other types of outcomes. We also want to showcase country policies, legislation, program, and qualitative process information relevant to school food and nutrition, relevant to school meals and other types of interventions in the school. And lastly, we are hearing more and more, of course, about the importance of youth involvement, about them being right bearers, about school meals as a tool to right to food, to support the right to food in schools. But and we are more and more hearing about how it is very important that the school children, the adolescents, are part of the decisions that affect them in daily life. But this is still very difficult to integrate the voices of the children in decisions. So we are trying to ensure that we have also space to hear, to collect their voices, not only of few privileged ones, but trying to understand what is the best way of engaging them in the aspects that pertain their health. The process of development of this hub was basically, we had a first stage in which we try to understand what other platforms exist out there, what we can make sure to not duplicate, and that we can link up with them. We had a lot of discussions with different platforms. We had a lot of discussions with WFP, GCNF, and now the different initiatives under the School Meals Coalition on how to ensure that we were focusing on nutrition and that we are not duplicating, but that we can be the best, that we can be a platform that serves a specific purpose and that is engaging and helping technical exchanges in this area. So we developed, after these phases of consultation, of looking at other platforms of what works best, we developed a mock-up, we developed a plan, and of the structure of the hub. We continue the consultation, and we are adding more and more parts of the structure for that, and I will send you the link to the hub so you can look at for yourselves. We also have been very focused on populating the hub, particularly the country profiles, which I will talk about in a minute, but aspects of which guidance exists already out there on different parts of school meal programs, of course, always focusing on the nutrition aspect, but also what exists, what other interventions, what is the guidance of different UN agencies Where is this guidance saying? What are the gaps? We have been using an UN interagency group to understand what is being published and how can we link to that better so that governments and countries and program planners can have these publications all in one place, that they know which publication or which guidance can serve them on which purposes. And the second phase of the hub is currently being done, in which we are trying to test different platforms or different ways of engaging peers or users on how they can best exchange technically on different parts of processes for setting their nutrition criteria for school meals, for instance, and where are the parts of the bottlenecks, the obstacles, what type of data do they don't have, what type of data is needed. So we are trying to trial different ways that peers can exchange easily without a lot of hurdles, and that it's not a very heavy process, because oftentimes these decisions are very fast, very technical, and we need to ensure a way that this can be done in the most efficient way. We have a variety of target users, and you will find in the hub different sections for the different users. As I mentioned, we have a lot of guidance manuals to enhance the quality of school meal programs and other interventions in the school for nutrition. So we are targeting practitioners and program planners. At the same time, we have advocacy sections on what we, as I was mentioning, it's important to not only focus on to understand, for instance, what is the best type of content of the school meal for a specific context, considering the resources. So trying to enhance the advocacy on the what is very important, apart from having a school meal program, but really focusing on enhancing the nutritional quality of that meal or those meals. As I mentioned already, school children and adolescents, we have a specific section for them that we are trying to not be top down, but also ensure that the voices, that the perceptions, that the attitudes, the practices of school children and adolescents are considered, because not always providing a school meal in certain contexts will ensure that that meal will be consumed, or there will not be compensatory behaviors at home, for instance, which are very important in the theory of change of school meal programs. So it's important to also consider what are their habits, their practices, their behaviors. We also target researchers while we're trying to, at the moment, as I mentioned, we are focusing on systematic reviews and meta-analysis, but we are focusing on linking with the research consortium, as Dr. Bundy presented, and making sure that we are linking to the most relevant evidence. The country profiles are a big part of the hub. We are linking to the GCNF country profiles, and we are focusing on getting process-based information that is very often not published elsewhere. We are not focusing on quantitative indicators of the school meal programs, but rather focusing on the processes of how those that make decisions on the nutrient content or the composition, food composition of the meals, how do they reach those decisions? Which countries have nutrition standards? How are they legislated? Are they voluntary? Are they obligatory? All of this type of information we are getting through key informant interviews, because we know and we have identified that this is a gap. So we are linking to the quantitative information, we are linking to the GCNF country profiles, we're also linking to case studies that have been coming out from the research consortium, and we're trying to link to all the information on school meal programs operationally, but we are focusing on the process-based information on the nutrition standards. These are our interviews from government stakeholders that take anything from 2 to 3 hours, and interviewing not only one person, because normally the scope of the work is under different technicians. These are the resources and evidence that we have tried. It's difficult to structure them, but we have tried to structure them based on thematic areas, based on school meal programs, but also on the parts of overall policy frameworks, on the part of nutrition education, on aspects of homegrown school feeding. And below you can see where we are trying to host the evidence, the latest systematic reviews on the different impacts of school meal programs and other types of interventions in the school on nutrition. The youth corner is the one that we are trying to move. We have launched different calls. We have received videos, we have received stories from school children and adolescents. We have received as well from school cooks on basically on their perceptions on what can they improve, what would they like to improve or to see improved in their meals, in their school food environments. We have seen the examples in UK lately of the youth, what has the youth achieved in demanding, for instance, free school meals, the expansion of free school meals. This has been extremely important with policymakers. So we are trying to see how we can incorporate their feedback, their experiences in the technical work, and not only afterwards the technical work is done and the normative guidance is done to let's say introduce it or try to find an advocate, but it's an iterative process. Some preliminary achievements of the hub, we are more and more getting more users. So far we have about 4,500 users. We are hosting technical webinars regarding, as I mentioned, specifically focused on nutrition. We have conducted, and the team conducting the key informant interviews are here today. And definitely very, very important. More than 56 interviews have been conducted with key informants from government ministries and technicians from about 40 countries and counting, which have been extremely rich in process-based information, in qualitative data. 2 global calls, as I mentioned, launched with school children, adolescents, and school cooks, and key collaborations with the School Meals Coalition and the initiatives under the Research Consortium, the GCNF, and of course, WFP. And next steps, so far we are, as I said before, trialing different exchange modalities on what is the best way or the most efficient or less moderated way that we can facilitate exchanges between technicians on bottlenecks that they often have in terms of data to make their decisions, in terms of making their decisions more robust, more evidence-based. We are understanding if we can expand the qualitative information or the process-based information that we are collecting to other aspects beyond the nutrition standards and the nutrition education part, to see if, what else, what other gap we can cover. But as I said, we don't want to duplicate any effort, but we want to complement efforts in terms of qualitative information. Regional snapshots of the countries in terms of the status on nutrition standards, as I mentioned, is one of the main recommendations for enhancing the nutrition impact of these programs. And we are the next year we are going to launch the nutrition standards global methodology that I mentioned in the beginning, and we will have a dedicated space for countries to access that. Hopefully we can make it interactive, but we are trying to understand the feasibility of that. And we are trying to monitor country progress in setting nutrition guidelines and standards for their school meals and the quality of those standards. And we are trying to understand if we can make some inputs for the next state of school feeding on this aspect. As well as supporting intra-regional network exchanges. We have links to network exchanges from Latin America, from the Pacific, Asia and the Pacific. And now we are trying to see how we can facilitate those exchanges. And I really take the opportunity to thank you all. This is a very big collaboration between both agencies and the work of many colleagues. So I am happy to answer any questions, and I welcome all inputs to this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melissa Vargas, who for sharing with us very insightful also information about the FAO School Food Global Hub. We have discovered how rich it is And as you rightly insisted, it was more about complementing with qualitative information rather than duplication. And that is really important as well as really advancing, building a much bigger body of evidence. But besides data and evidence, there's a need for technical guidance, there's a need for standards and policies. So really appreciated your insight on the importance of knowledge management platforms. And I understand that how important is the role of making sure that there are linkages between the various platforms, and where we leverage actually the power of those platforms in terms of information sharing, in terms of leveraging good practices, documentation, sharing lessons learned, and really creating this synergy among the key stakeholders within the sectors. So this was really a very important, Ms. Vargas. I'm trying to check on the monitor whether there's any specific question, but thank for sharing also. I've seen the link of the platform has been shared on the chat box, and that's really important. I take advantage also to welcome colleagues from Benin and Chad, who has joined us. And I did say that Senegal was already in line. Thank you very much for being among us, and please share your questions. And a big thanks to the close to 100 people who are still with us. They show the interest of the questions that are putting forward. So Melissa Vargas, very quickly before we move to the next session, is to see how in the field, because I saw very interestingly, you really look at not only from the decision makers, practitioners, etc. You're targeting really a very wide range of stakeholders there. What has been your experience in making sure that the voices of those who are receiving the school meals, being the children or the adolescents, how do we make sure that we capture that it is heard, and how does it help improve globally the programs, particularly when it comes to crafting those guidelines and standards?
Yes, thank you for that very, very pertinent question. So we are adopting a human rights approach in the way that we provide the guidance. The human rights approach, one of the main principles of it is to ensure that the right bearers, in this case, the adolescents, the children, and their families, they know about their entitlements, they know about why school meals, they know about what they're entitled to in terms of the nutrition content, and that they can do something about it to claim their right. In this case, the evidence is also telling us that in many occasions, even very good interventions to improve children's diets may not be completely aligned with habits, traditions, or even the values that school children and adolescents have. And this is widely different in the world. For instance, some school children and adolescents value very much the environmental sustainability of what they eat, for instance. So these are important things that we needed to identify. We have seen that the efforts to involve youth and adolescents that are not grassroots, that are not coming from them, are very difficult, because we end up having the same voices heard, let's say. Of course, those who speak English, who are well-spoken, who have more access to studies, and still the voices of those that are more vulnerable are very difficult to be heard, especially in a global or regional context. So what we have tried to do, and we still have a long way to go, is to try to get to understand what are the best ways or the best mechanisms that school children and adolescents can express themselves. It's not through a survey, or it's not through a focus group, or it's not through something that we would immediately think that it's easier for us, but it's something that we are trying to understand through videos, through social media, through different kinds of the ways that they want to communicate best. Still, there are a lot of children and adolescents that do not have access to social media or internet. So we are trying to see if there can be specific champions that can moderate the voices of those that are more vulnerable. From the feedback that we've been receiving so far, we are trying to craft guidance in terms of acceptability, in terms of values of the school meal, what interventions targeting which values or which motivations in school children and adolescents can work best, of course, align with the evidence, but also of what the children are saying that are important to them. And especially in terms of acceptability, in terms of taste, in terms of pleasure, in terms of social interaction, which is something that has been left outside of conversations. The meal time is a time for social interaction. And this is when you ask, we have done in Ghana and Cambodia studies where we ask children to draw their school meal time. The majority of the drawings come with interacting. They have nothing to do with the food, but rather the interactions that they have. So allowing time for that and promoting that is something that we're including in the standards as well.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Melissa Vargas, for this very comprehensive answer. Thank you, and please stay with us as we move into the next panelist. It is important, and this panelist, please join me in welcoming warmly Ms. Fatoumata Fofana, who is the fourth and final finalist, who is a doctoral researcher at the University of Nangui à Brogua here in Côte d'Ivoire. And I'm particularly happy to welcome her because Ms. Fatoumata Fofana has been spent 4 months with us here at CERFAM as one of the volunteers, doctoral researchers that join us through this CERFAM University Nangui à Brogua partnership, where we have a professional immersion program. So really happy to have her with us. This is a joint initiative that not only look at advancing research into food security, nutrition, and school meals, also food system, but seek also to valorize African research while we're providing also professional experience to promising doctoral researcher. So over the course of the program, Dr. Fofana undertook research on improving the nutritional quality of school meals in Côte d'Ivoire. This was how could we include enriched cassava products into the school meals. This is the introduction of local ingredient. And I saw on the chat box there was a question also about that. Even in terms of guidelines, how do we make sure that school meals are increasingly more adapted to local contexts, really making sure that the menu meets the preferences of the children that receive them, both in terms of quality, but also in other cultural aspects also. So we'll have the pleasure of hearing a bit more about this research, the value it adds to school feeding literature in Africa, and particularly in Côte d'Ivoire, but also how we can apply her research to the Ivorian school feeding program. So thank you, Ms. Fofana, for joining us. And Ms. Fofana will be presenting in French. So I will invite our English speakers to switch on to the interpretation if so they can follow Ms. Fofana. For the rest of us, let us join hands in welcoming warmly Ms. Fofana. The floor is yours.
Merci Patrice pour cette introduction. Bonjour à tous et merci d'être présents sur ce webinaire. Comme l'ont déjà mentionné les précédents panélistes, les programmes des cantines scolaires sont un moteur essentiel de développement du capital humain, avec pour premier objectif d'assurer une alimentation équilibrée et adaptée aux besoins nutritifs de ceux-ci. Il participe également à une augmentation des taux de scolarisation et une réduction de ceux de l'absentéisme et de l'abandon scolaire. Les cantines scolaires sont également un lieu de convivialité et d'échange entre les élèves. Ils participent également à l'apprentissage de bonnes habitudes alimentaires aux élèves dès leur bas âge. Toutefois, une attention moindre est accordée à la réduction ou à la privation des carences en micronutriments. En effet, des études antérieures ont montré que de nombreux enfants dont le développement est menacé par des carences en micronutriments vivent en Afrique. Et la carence la plus fréquemment rencontrée est celle en fer, qui est la cause majeure de l'anémie. Hormis cette carence, la carence en vitamine A est aussi rencontrée. Cette carence en 2007 avait affecté 24,1% d'enfants dont l'âge est compris entre 6 et 59 mois. Des études également effectuées par Beger et collaborateurs sur 400 enfants d'école primaire âgés de 7 à 14 ans ont montré que 85% de ces enfants étaient en sous-poids ou maigres et 33,6% d'enfants âgés de 5 à 12 mois souffraient d'anémie. Ces auteurs ont fait un lien entre ces carences et les habitudes alimentaires de ceux-ci. J'ai donc été intriguée de savoir un peu plus sur les programmes alimentaires en Côte d'Ivoire. Il faut savoir que le gouvernement ivoirien s'est engagé depuis 1989 dans le programme alimentaire, dans le programme des cantines scolaires. Et ce sont plus de 5000 cantines scolaires qui existent en Côte d'Ivoire. En 2022, plus de 5000 cantines ont été... Il faut savoir d'abord que les cantines sont approvisionnées par le gouvernement avec le soutien de certaines organisations et institutions telles que le Programme alimentaire mondial, le Programme des Nations unies pour le développement, l'Union européenne, la Banque mondiale, ainsi que les communautés locales. En 2022, ce sont plus de 5000 cantines qui ont été approvisionnées par le gouvernement, ce qui a permis à plus de 900 000 enfants de bénéficier d'un repas chaud et équilibré. Les vivres fournis par le gouvernement ivoirien aux cantines scolaires sont essentiellement composés de céréales, plus spécifiquement le riz, des légumineuses, des légumes, de poissons, d'huile, de céréales, de pâtes alimentaires et des sardines. Les plats composés à partir de ces repas sont essentiellement à base du riz. Le riz, qui est l'aliment le plus importé et constituant l'un des plus gros postes de dépenses du pays. Il faut savoir que la Côte d'Ivoire se classe en deuxième position parmi les plus gros importateurs du riz en Afrique. Aussi, avec l'avènement des crises et en particulier la COVID-19, nous avons assisté à la fermeture de nombreuses frontières. De ce fait, les gouvernements et les écoles doivent être plus dépendantes des produits locaux et indépendantes des importations. Ce qui m'a poussé à faire plus de recherches sur les aliments beaucoup plus produits en Côte d'Ivoire. Parmi ces aliments, le manioc a retenu mon attention. Il faut savoir que le manioc est une culture qui est beaucoup plus produite en Afrique subsaharienne et constitue l'aliment de base de plusieurs populations africaines. Avec une production de plus de 6 millions de tonnes, la Côte d'Ivoire, avec plus de 6 millions de tonnes en Côte d'Ivoire, le manioc est la troisième source de calories de plus de 26 millions de personnes en Côte d'Ivoire. Cette denrée fait l'objet de multiples préparations selon les variétés cultivées, des préférences culinaires des groupes ethniques selon le pays. Les dérivés de manioc fréquemment rencontrés en Afrique et en Côte d'Ivoire sont la tchéké, qui est une semoule de manioc une semoule de manioc d'apparence gloméruleuse, cuite à la vapeur. Il se consomme avec le poisson, des légumes et de la viande. Aussi, nous avons de l'atoupou, qui est sous forme d'une plaquette circulaire. Il est fait à base de farine de manioc qui, une fois tamisée et remuée, est cuite à la vapeur. Nous avons également le placali. Le placali qui est une pâte de manioc fermentée et préparée et se consomme avec de la sauce plala, qui est une feuille locale, de la sauce graine accompagnée de poisson ou de la viande. Nous avons aussi le gari qui est une farine granuleuse de couleur blanc crème à la saveur légèrement fermentée et au goût légèrement aigre. Nous avons enfin le tapioca. Le tapioca qui est issu de la fermentation qui est une fécule de l'amidon de manioc. J'ai également effectué des études des analyses sur la composition des dérivés de manioc. Il faut savoir qu'en termes de glucides, l'attiéké vient en première position. Et en opposition, nous avons le gari. Le gari également contient plus de lipides que les autres dérivés. Le tapioca contient la teneur la plus faible en lipides. Les teneurs en protéines et en énergie sont beaucoup plus élevées dans l'attiéké. Et les teneurs les plus faibles se trouvent également dans le tapioca. En ce qui concerne la teneur en fibres, le gari en contient beaucoup plus et la plus faible teneur est observée dans l'attiéké. En ce qui concerne l'humidité, la teneur en placali est plus élevée en humidité. Et en centre, la teneur en tapioca est plus élevée. En ce qui concerne la composition minérale, il faut savoir que le placali est beaucoup plus riche en magnésium, en calcium, en potassium, en cuivre et en silicium. En ce qui est la teneur en fer, le gari en contient plus. Quant à la teneur en sodium, l'atoupou contient beaucoup plus. En phosphore, l'attiéké vient en première position. J'ai également effectué des recherches s'il existait des dérivés de manioc qui avaient fait l'objet d'enrichissement dans le monde comme en Côte d'Ivoire. Les recherches ont révélé que le tapioca a été enrichi à la farine de soja et aux noix de coco. Au Nigeria également, le gari a été enrichi de taro, ce qui a permis une diminution de la teneur en matière grasse et en glucides, et en parallèle une augmentation de la teneur en fibres, en protéines et en minéraux. En Côte d'Ivoire, l'attiéké a également été enrichi en oméga 3 et en provitamine A. Au Cameroun, un enrichissement de gari a été fait à base de patates douces, ce qui a permis une augmentation du niveau des protéines et des lipides par rapport au gari de base. Au terme de cette présentation, vu que le placali est riche en magnésium, en potassium, en calcium, en cuivre, en silicium et en fer, cet aliment pourrait être inclus dans les repas scolaires en Côte d'Ivoire, ce qui permettra de lutter contre les carences dans les minéraux précités. L'inclusion de l'attiéké, surtout sous forme enrichie en vitamine A, en fer et en oméga 3, pourrait également réduire les carences en Côte d'Ivoire. En somme, il faut dire que l'inclusion des dérivés de manioc dans les cantines scolaires permettra non seulement de fournir un repas équilibré et nutritif pour soutenir la croissance, le développement et la santé globale des élèves, mais aussi d'assurer la pérennité de nos cantines scolaires. Sur ces mots, Je vous dis merci de votre attention.
Merci beaucoup, Fatoumata Fofana. Alors, j'ai cru comprendre que peut-être quand je présentais, il y a eu une partie du micro qui n'a pas bien fonctionné. J'ai vu ça dans les commentaires. Mais en tout cas, je vais rappeler que Fatoumata est elle travaille, elle fait de la recherche au niveau doctoral à l'université d'Angui à Bois, ici en Côte d'Ivoire. Et elle a aussi fait partie du programme d'immersion professionnelle, donc entre le CERFAM et l'université Nangui à Brogois. Donc ce programme vise à valoriser la recherche africaine, à vraiment s'assurer aussi qu'on puisse étudier des aspects qui sont importants au niveau local, notamment quand il s'agit de faire en sorte que les diètes alimentaires, les menus des enfants soient enrichis, donc soient plus nutritifs, soient plus sains, mais aussi soient accessibles. Alors, j'ai juste une petite question, Madame Fofana. Elle porte sur les coûts. On sait que des fois, les coûts et la pénibilité, on a entendu avec beaucoup d'attention ces aspects, même si les aliments des fois sont riches, on se dit, mais est-ce qu'ils ne posent pas des problèmes de coût? Est-ce qu'ils ne posent pas des problèmes de conservation? Comment on s'assure que justement les résultats de ces recherches, si j'étais au ministère de l'Éducation, puissent m'aider à prendre des décisions par rapport à leur introduction dans les menus des écoles ici en Côte d'Ivoire?
D'accord, merci Patrice pour la question. Il faut dire que le manioc est un produit local, est un aliment qui est produit localement, alors que le riz, qui est l'aliment de base des cantines, est importé. Ce qui coûte une fortune, si je peux dire, au gouvernement ivoirien. Si nous utilisons un produit local, cela permettra d'être réduit le coût d'importation et puis cela permettra de réduire la pauvreté déjà, parce que ça va permettre aux producteurs d'augmenter leurs revenus agricoles. Mais déjà, un produit agricole sera beaucoup plus, un produit local sera beaucoup plus moins cher qu'un produit importé. Selon moi.
Merci beaucoup. On trouvera même, bien sûr, l'occasion de développer cette recherche pour avoir les coûts précis et pouvoir justement approfondir l'utilité que ça pourrait. En tout cas, félicitations pour cela et
Merci.
pour avoir rejoint notre programme. Nous passons maintenant à la prochaine phase de ce webinaire. Il nous reste à peu près une vingtaine de minutes. Donc, avec votre permission, je vais passer à l'anglais. I'm going to switch now into English. We were left now with 20 minutes for question and answers. And I would like to thank again all the presenters for the brilliant presentation, very rich. And now it's opening to this open floor session where the audience is invited to post questions. I just want to remind the inviters that they cannot, but raising their hand wouldn't help much because we had activated the mic. So it's better they type their questions. And I do have a question already coming from Asetu Jomande, who is asking actually in French, quelles sont les dispositions qui seront prises afin de faire respecter toutes les normes et règles par les établissements? So this, I think, is directed to Ms. Melissa Vargas, asking what are the measures that can be taken in ensuring that the guidelines, the standards are being respected by the schools, those who are supposed to apply them. Maybe we'll start with that. We'll warm up with Melissa Vargas with the first question. And the other panelists should feel free also to jump in to complement those answers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Yes, indeed, we're very well aware that the existence of nutrition standards do not automatically translate into their implementation at school level. And in fact, there is a lot of implementation issues as with the operational part of the school meal program. I will not focus on the part of finance and the capacities and all of these parts that are part of the operation of the school meal program, but we have noticed that there is, for instance, when in the monitoring and in the monitoring process of the school meal programs, when we ask about how do they monitor that the quality of the meal served is actually complying with the standards set by the government or by different levels, there is almost no indicator that actually measures or compliance. It's normally quantity of meals served, quantity of children fed, or in very few occasions they actually monitor not regularly the quality of the meal served. So starting from the fact that we do not have a very good understanding of what is the rate of compliance, so trying to set up in the systems, in the monitoring and evaluation systems of the school meal programs, we are trying to advocate for setting up one indicator to measure, measure compliance. Of course, it cannot be every day, but systems such as visiting schools and trying to see what is a checklist with the compliance of the standards is one thing that we are recommending. But we do need much more data on that.
No, thank you very much. I wonder whether the other panelists would like to add before I switch to the next question. Well, feel free to jump at any time, but I would like to get back to Professor Don on this research consortium, which is, as you said, really regrouping a lot of different structures, institutions. As we're joining from more than 85 countries, the coalition, I'm wondering to which extent now you think that those countries are also, because as they join, they sign a declaration, and I understand also they should come up with a plan on how they're planning to do that. What is the role of the research consortium into not only monitoring, if we want, but helping, supporting the countries in building the data they need so they can measure progress over time?
Yeah, good question. Nice question. Can I just take a moment to say that I really enjoyed Dr. Fofana's presentation. This issue of which many people call food sovereignty, cultural choices, local choices based on historical choices by the population, by the community. This is very important, and the more in this white paper we're doing on climate friendly is also meant to be planet friendly. And we need to think about these issues, food items that fit with local growing practices, local cultural preferences. They may well be the best food choices to make, and we haven't paid enough attention to this. So Dr. Fofana's presentation was great because it was really technical and strong, and it's an issue that I really think we need to pay more attention to. So well done. I like that. But let me get back to your question, Patrick. And in fact, you asked that also, didn't you, of Dr. Weinman, really, at the end of the presentation from GCNF. And what I would say is, I think one point that didn't really come over during that conversation was that when countries report on this, and so even with the GCNF surveys, they're working with WFP country offices as well in this process, as well as with the governments. It's a process that's ongoing, and there's part of the goal here is to achieve direct country submissions to any database that's produced. In other words, that it's the of course, it should be the country that is collecting data and reporting the data. That's the right way to do it. I think that's what you implied, Patrick, in your question after the conversation. And so I think there's a real movement in that direction. And so that's something from the research consortium point, we also are trying to help with indicators. But I think the biggest part of that will actually come from this new data and monitoring initiative that the World Food Programme is supporting. So I think since the State of School Feeding report in 2013, there has been a lot of discussion about why is there not a database for school meals and school health in the world? Why isn't there a global database? And now WFP has said, we will support creating a global database. And that means, of course, also supporting the collection of data. So when we heard from about the survey methods of GCNF, that may well be a key part of the way people think about this going forward. But of course, the central part will be governments reporting their own data, just as we have for all the other UN databases. So what I would say, the big message here, I think, for everyone listening is please engage with the data and monitoring initiative. I think this will be the future of recording data, but it will be based on countries themselves having a much clearer idea of the practices and activities going on within their countries. That's my comment, Patrick.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. That bears nicely into also the role of the regional economic communities and the African Union. And I know that, well, maybe most of the participants may not know that there's been a declaration of head of states of the African Union that saw homegrown school feeding as a priority for development in achieving the aspirations of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. So I was wondering, and Dr. Weinman, how do you see this work also being leveraged at a regional and continental level? I know that I mentioned that maybe during informal conversation before we started, the research consortium was organizing a webinar with Auda Nepad that happened yesterday, and today there is increasing appetite the regional economic communities to look at what is the role they can have on with homegrown school feeding in pushing their agenda forward. There is upcoming ECOWAS School Meal Summit in September. So there's this appetite. I was wondering how you see this data evidence based research really helping that agenda.
Sorry, was this question for me?
Yes, for you. I think as you were talking about this increasing coverage you've been having and engagement, and beyond the countries, how can we leverage really the regional economic communities, but also the African Union to push this research agenda, evidence generation agenda forward?
I think that's a great question. In some, I won't be very eloquent in answering, so I won't take up much time. But in some ways, I can imagine that it will. The impetus needs to come from these regional leadership to engage and to step up and interact with the survey and assume a leadership position, encouraging countries to fill out the survey and also interacting with the data. Another thing that I can say, I'll just talk for a minute more. Another thing I can say is that at GCNF as well, we are really happy to conduct regional analyses for users that are interested in receiving, for example, a 10-page summary of what's happening in West Africa or what's happening in Europe in school meal programs. So we've been working on doing that for Latin America, for the Caribbean, and we would be very happy to engage with these regional governance authorities to further that work.
No, excellent, excellent. And you can count, of course, on SERFAM to help you. We have this field presence here. It's really one of our roles there to really leverage this dissemination of good practices and make sure that those data are translated into concrete action on the ground. Now, I would have spent hours speaking with you, but we're coming to a close. And unfortunately, as much as I would like us to stay longer, I know that you have also other commitments. I would like just to don't feel like you've been uncaught or caught by surprise, I would say. In October, the President Macron is organizing a summit on the School Meals Coalition, where we're going to have a big gathering of people there. And I was like wondering, this is the famous elevator pitch, kind of 1 minute. If you had to convince those attendees and you were giving the floor for 1 minute on stressing the importance of data, evidence generation, of research, what would you say in 1 minute? Who wants to start? I think I was catching you a bit by surprise, but I would say that's the elevator pitch where you have 1 minute to address this gathering, and it's about pushing this research agenda forward.
So I'm happy to get us moving because I'm sure
okay, thank you, Donald.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay, well, so I would say that what we need to recognize is the importance of the years between 5 and 20 for the wealth of our nations and the success of our countries, and that we need to recognize the importance of investing in school children and adolescents' good well-being, development, as well as their education. And that in order to do that properly, we need to have better data on this group. This is a group that is least studied of any demographic group in the world. And so getting better data is an essential part of investing in this, in the future of our countries.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Who wants to go next? Dr. Weinman?
What I would say is a little bit different. I would encourage the participants of that meeting that not to view data as something that might be dry or boring, but really data is about storytelling. It's about understanding what's happening and understanding the story of school meal programs. So that would be my pitch, that data is not something that is just in a spreadsheet. It's about stories.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Vargas?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would encourage them to invest in generating data from low and middle income countries. The majority of the data that we have are coming from high income countries, and they really drive the design of the programs, the improvement and the continuous improvement of the programs. We are basing it on data that is not contextual. So if we really want to make sure that the programs are impactful for nutrition, for diet, we need to have data from the context. We need to have data from what's available, from what the children eat, and from what they prefer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fofana? Le micro, des mots de clôture.
Merci pour la question. Il faut dire que les données sont beaucoup plus importantes pour pouvoir améliorer l'état nutritionnel des enfants. Mais je souhaiterais souligner un fait. Il faut que dans nos pays, il faut que les données soient accessibles parce qu'on n'a pas souvent des informations récentes ou bien il n'y a pas de recherche faite pour pouvoir avoir des données. Alors que sans les données, nous ne pouvons pas prendre des décisions et puis améliorer ce qui existe.
Merci, merci énormément. Alors, je voudrais juste rappeler aux participants, I would like to remind the participants that there are additional questions that we will share with the panelists and have written answers to them. I would like also to confirm that the presentations will be shared, will be made available to all, and also the recording. So we're going to prepare a report on this that will be shared widely. But feel free also to access those links that were shared on the chat box. And Surfam is happy also to connect you to the panelists and to their respective institutions. For as far as we're concerned, it's been a real pleasure to welcome the expertise, the wealth of knowledge, I would say experience that has enabled us really to spend 2 hours well spent on leveraging the importance of data, of evidence generation, of research. If we are to make a change, if we are to transform the landscape, we need really to back it with strong, robust evidence that will be so compelling that the decision makers and all the other stakeholders will just feel that this is what they need to reach those SDGs that we are talking, to get back into track, to build back better. So it's been a real pleasure for us, Surfam, to welcome you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event, the next webinar that we're organizing on Monday. That will be on the agricultural value chain. Stay tuned for that as you receive the invitation and you join us. I would like to thank very much also all those who have worked behind the scenes, the Surfam team, particularly Sapna, who has been really instrumental in connecting the dots, the interpreters who have been doing also a very brilliant job, and of course, all the rest of the team here and your respective teams there. As you say, we're just the messengers, but behind there's a great deal of work that have been done there. So wish you the best of success in your next meetings, conferences, and of course in this collaboration that we are seeing very promising amongst ourselves in pushing the school meal agenda forward. Thanks again to all of you and look forward to the next event. And bye-bye for now.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir à tous.
Au revoir.